Saintess summons skeletons, a holy necromancy lit RPG. By Morn. Chapter 141, The Boat of Shame. Grab my head and retreat. Perith was still standing over Sofia. He hadn't managed to protect her, his senses in the darkness were even more limited than hers, so he could only rely on sound and the orders. He located the head from the sound it had made when it hit the ground. He grabbed it along with the whole rest of the body and ran back as fast as he could. A few attacks landed against his back, producing shrill sounds, but failing to do any damage. Thankfully, they had been advancing very carefully and they weren't far from the pond. Sofia's body regrowing from her head that was in Perith's hand made the escape awkward, but it worked. They emerged in the light, and Perith dropped a naked Sofia in her old, bloody dead body near the pond and turned to face the darkness. The first thing Sofia noticed was that her old body had taken a few more hits during the escape. It was bleeding from 3 deep cuts that had severed everything in their path, as well as from the headless neck. She reactivated her armor and braced herself behind Perith, his sanctified grounds finally flaring up around them. But the monsters, whatever they were, never showed up in the light. Perith deactivated his skills to get mana back, but he still stood guard. Ah, that has to be the worst way to die. Without the rune, I'd be dead on the spot in this tunnel without knowing what even hit me. And now for the fun part. She had to pick her stuff from her own dead and bloody corpse. When she blew herself up whole, she used to take off the important things first, letting Perith hold them while she rushed up to the thrombers only wearing her armor. But this time, she was wearing the space anchor bracelet, the saint set, the storage ring, and the clothing set from the trial. And now she had to undress herself to take it back. That feels way worse than I thought, and I did think it would be shit. Ugh. But this is much better than being dead. The real casualties were the birds she lost along the way. None survived. Sofia was dressed up, and her old body sat morbidly in a corner of her storage ring. The monsters had not shown up again. She needed to rethink the way she approached this place. Health, 5900/5900. Stamina, 1899/1900. Mana, 23,220/79,500. Of course, all the mana in my body was lost. But I still have what was in my head and soul. Not too bad. She knew from experience that she would lose some of her mana when unexpectedly losing body parts. The rune did not compensate for that. But interestingly, even when she blew her whole body up into charred dust from the point-blank angel bolts, there would always be some leftover mana, which she had concluded must be stored in her soul. Though it could have been stored in the rune too, she had decided that it wasn't it since that was not in the skill description. How do I approach this? Unknown monsters, invisible, can kill me in a single hit. Tough enough to survive a whip hit and a stab from Perith. And there are at least 2 of them. I think I can imagine what happened to whoever had his backpack cut up. Maybe that was Zero's even, though I can't imagine too many people would survive that. And why would he not mention it in the report? And he was the one to suggest looking into Sivius. I need to stay wary about the Emperor. But it's not like he could have known I needed to find a place like this one. I'm probably reading into things too much. But I should keep these things in mind. Despite the monsters not attacking her while she was in the light so far, Sofia didn't feel too safe there. She took one of Zangdar Castle's wooden wardrobe closets. This will float, right? Taking off the doors, it looked like a small bark. A scuffed, rectangular bark, but a bark nonetheless. She drew the sun ritual inside and set it afloat on the silver water pond. Of course, Perith wasn't allowed inside. Only when she was at the center of the pond did she feel safe enough to remove her second immortality rune and let her mana regenerate. She needed her mana regeneration to be fast, hence the sun ritual. When her mana was full, she took out the book and summoned the 4 withered vampires. They swam around her in the pond, waiting for their orders. Go with Perith, destroy whatever's in there. Damn, they're fast. The vampires' stats were very weird, they had almost no mana and not so much health either. Health, 9,000/9,000. Stamina, 36,000/36,000. Mana, 180/180. Lifetime, 10772s/10800s. But that's a lot of stamina. Skeletons don't even use stamina though. Alright, you 4 stay in the light. Perith, go forward and use sanctified grounds when you're attacked. The vampires only go in the dark when the buff is up. Rush to the zone, then don't leave it. Kill the damn assassins in there. Oh wait, I'm sending the birds too. Since you guys can't see in there. It'll take me 20 minutes to be full mana again, then 30 to draw the runes. By the time I'm done things should be over. Good luck, skeletons. That's right, why should I put myself in so much danger? I have skeletons for that. I have heroes for that. Truly the summoner dream, no reason to actually do anything. Ah, but the point was to train the passive. How is it? Venerable physique of the primeval void. Second step, become able to see in the dark, 13,002%/100%. Not bad for such a short time, it was at 7 from the trip through the forest, that's almost as much progress for like 2 minutes in the dungeon's darkness. But it's not going up while I'm on my boat. I'd like to see what's going on but I can't see shit from Paratha's perspective. Guess I can still monitor his stats to see how it's going. He's not losing mana yet so the fighting hasn't started. Can I speed up the absorption of ambient mana somehow? This feels like something that should be a thing. Seriously. I know it goes up with the trials but that's... Can I breathe it in or what? How do we usually absorb it in the first place? A trip to the Empire's Magic Academy is in order whenever I have the time. I need to learn more about mana and skill evolution. Oh, the fight is starting I think. Sofia couldn't help the skeletons at all from where she was, so she focused on her own things, doing some organization of her storage ring's contents. Some birds died, and soon after she heard the first echoes of fighting in the tunnels. The monsters screamed every time they got hit. She monitored Paratha's stats, he was steadily losing mana but his health was still full. Considering his buffs, it would take a hit worth around 20,000 damage to hurt him in his zone, that was a tall order. You have defeated True Shade, leave 212. Oh, so these are actually shades? That was in the file. I just didn't think it was worth looking up more. Turns out I'm still way too careless. Well, I have the runes so I can afford it. Can't spend all my life doing in-depth research when I have a god to kill in the next 100 years. In truth Sofia already knew the very basics about shades, they were semi-corporeal ghosts, almost immune to physical attacks but not completely, their main quirk was that they were stuck to the ground and walls, like actual shadows. If there were areas of strong direct light, they would avoid going through it as it would harm them. And trapping them in such an area of light would most likely throw them into a panicked frenzy. That was the full paragraph about them that was in the book about spirit monsters she had read during her big book binge in Huoaso. I was curious about how they attack if they can't leave the walls but by the looks of it that doesn't restrict them that much. I wonder about the true part of their name though. The one thing that was true was that this dungeon made the perfect environment for a shade. An eternal darkness where they could move freely and be safe from all light. You have defeated True Shade, leave 231. You gained a level. Another shade already? They must still be weak to Paratha's light weapon at any rate, because he's destroying them. That or the feral vampires are way stronger than I expected. At this speed, I'll hit the level cap soon. I'll wait until I have all my runes ready and I'll follow them from a distance. I'd stay in the darkness near the pond if that was enough but the training method says I have to explore. I have about 2 weeks to fully explore this place. And it's not the Empire's territory so no worrying about the tax. What should I do next? I can't go after the high priests before the next trial. I'll follow Tyrene's advice and only go when I'm completely maxed out. I still need to train Sanctity more and at least find a way to upgrade the bone armor. It's really too weak now. Didn't protect me from the shades at all. Well, perhaps Alith will have other plans. She hasn't been fighting for the months she spent on her own but with how she can never stay in place for long she must have found something interesting to do. Chapter 142, Shady Business. Parath and the vampires made steady progress in the corridor until a certain point where they got overwhelmed. 2 of the vampires got killed and that made everything harder. Paratha's mana was also starting to run low, so they retreated and came back to the pond. Sofia was too busy carving the runes on her body to be thinking about the next steps at the moment. Only when she got done carving the first one did she pause to look at the system notifications. You have defeated True Shade, leave 172. You have defeated True Shade, leave 180. You have defeated True Shade, leave 201. You have defeated True Shade, leave 199. You have defeated True Shade, leave 236. You gained a level. You have defeated True Shade, leave 236. You have defeated True Shade, leave 212. All I get from this is general experience, and even that will become worthless soon. That's not ideal. I need to get in there and fight with my own skills. But that's dangerous. I need my 3 runes ready. She focused on carving her second immortality rune on her other shoulder. Then the third one appeared on her waist. I'm starting to look like a piece of spare paper used to try out a new stamp. And with this, I have an absolute 9 seconds of invincibility. That or 3 random death cancels. That does make me feel a lot safer. Though if something manages to break all 3 runes, it can likely kill me a 4th time. Sofia left her makeshift bark and joined Perith and the 2 vampires. One of them was badly damaged. Sofia healed him, frowning at the mana consumption. Heal Undead reached level 59. Heal Undead invokes a pillar of holy healing light. Only heals the undead. Max range and radius of 59 meter, 1 * skill level. Heal the undead for 69, 10 plus skill level, health plus, 5% of the healed undead's maximum health per second while the light is channeled. The light pill's upkeep is 100 mana per second plus 1 mana per 2 health points restored. Does not work in restricted spaces. This is not so good anymore. Every skeleton starts to have so much health I can barely heal them without drying out my mana. And the levels don't actually do anything to help the issue. There's really only one way to fix that. I need more mana. Or to get a better healing skill. I also have the High Priest skeleton for healing now, but he takes so much mist from the book. Skill issues aside, it was time to explore the dungeon. The new team formation was Perith ahead, and Sofia with the vampires a good 30 meters behind. If anything happened, Perith could always teleport back. Sofia still couldn't see anything in the dark, but she picked up on something new around where she got attacked before thanks to her mana sense. There were a few piles of something near the walls, they emanated some remnants of mana. Is that what's left of the killed shades? She crouched to check on the nearest pile of grainy stuff. She picked some between her thumb and index, trying to understand what this was. Some kind of dust, powder? It's very fine and volatile. Does identify work? The skill didn't work, that she had to be able to see the object was still a requirement, and mana senses didn't count. Wait, actually. She could see objects in her storage ring, so it stood to reason that if she collected the dust. She had a lot of empty jars left over from all the food she ate during her training of the passive skill's first step. She scooped some of the powder with the jar and stored that. Inside the storage space, she could perfectly see the glass jar containing a handful of fine black powder. Looks like charcoal dust. I bet that would make a nice black ink. True Shade dust, the remains of a purified True Shade killed by holy light. Can be used to fuel rituals, brew potions, or dye clothing and armor. Does not reflect any light. Highly flammable while in powder form, store with caution. That's right, no mere darkness can stop my scribe, that dust will be useful. Sofia decided to collect all of it. If the description was correct, this was a rare commodity. In fact, the way to get this was so specific it could very well be worth enormous money if there were any buyers. With that out of the way, they kept advancing, reaching the spot where 2 of the vampires had succumbed. Perith was ready and his sanctified grounds flared up. Sofia didn't take part in the fight and neither did the vampires. She let Perith handle it since he was taking no damage anyway. Instead, she focused on trying to find a way to see the shades. Even for Perith, it would make it easier if he could rely on sight instead of only sound and bird location. Since there was no way to produce any light in the dungeon, she also had to listen for the shades and tried showering them with summoned blood. Blood always contained mana, even the blood she summoned. So if that could hit the shades, she would be able to see them. For some reason that did not work. The blood splattered against the walls and ground, hitting nothing. Either they dodged it all or the blood didn't stick. Is that because they're essentially ghosts and the blood is counted as a physical attack? Sofia was earnestly trying and she felt indignant that all her ideas except sending Perith failed so miserably at dealing with the shades. She tried other things like throwing the dust from their fallen comrades at them since that was also mana charged, but it didn't work either. Wait a minute. They don't go near the pond. Silver water dissolves souls. It's water that affects the spirit realm, right? She had collected a whole barrel's worth of the thing and the pond was still nearby. It's a bit wasteful, but... Sofia summoned the whole barrel out of her storage. Of course, the light of the water was still suppressed by the darkness. She plunged her hand into the thick liquid. That has to work. Like the powder before, she put some of the liquid in a glass jar, closed it, and threw it at the screaming monsters further ahead. She missed by a long shot, she could tell without even checking with her mana sense. What am I doing? Next, she filled another jar and gave it to the vampire skeleton on her left. The jar flew toward the next screaming shade. It exploded and the monster was covered in liquid. Its screaming only got worse, and Sofia could finally see her enemies with her mana senses. The liquid showed the shade moving along the wall as it screamed. It was truly like a shadow stuck to the hole and filling every crevice, following the grain of the stone. It was vaguely humanoid with uneven features, and where a normal human's shadow would have had arms, it had two blade-like spikes as long as the rest of its body. It flailed around, howling in pain, and Sofia understood how these things attacked. They could detach their sword-like arms from the wall, turning them corporeal and using them like actual weapons. At the moment, these were scratching the floor, leaving deep grooves as the monster struggled because of the silver water. Leave this one to me. Perith did so. He was fighting at least 3 more of the monsters that were already taking up all his attention. 3 seconds later Sofia's spine of the black sun was fully materialized in her hand, and she lashed out at the shade that was shaking off more and more of the silver water with each passing instant. The monster shook so badly as the solar flare from the spine's whip attack engulfed it that Sofia almost felt bad for it. She struck a second time. Between the silver water and the repeated debilitating explosions the shade was very sensitive to, it couldn't move anymore. Sofia struck and struck again. The shade caught fire, it burned up in a flash of mana, completely obstructing Sofia's mana senses. She could clearly hear the roar of a raging fire coming from his direction. It calmed down as abruptly as it had started and all that was left was another pile of dust. It looks brighter than Perith's piles. You have defeated True Shade, leave 206. Way of the Fool grants bonus experience. You gained a level. Sofia raised her whip, cheering at her victory, but she had to double-check Way of the Fool's description. Way of the Fool, analytical thinking is 69%, 1 * skill level plus 50, more efficient when used for personal gains. The Fool always stumbles but never falls. Gain extra experience from performing kills with trickery and deceit. That was trickery or deceit. Why? Because it felt safe from me throwing useless shit at it before finding something that worked. Was that the trickery? Hey, I'll take it. But I'd rather for the skill to level up and not my class. Chapter 143, Sculpted. Sofia had been lost in her thoughts for a second and Perith had killed another of the shades in the meantime. You have defeated True Shade, leave 199. Taking another empty jar out of her ring, she prepared another silver water projectile, handing it to a vampire. I'm going to be out of jars soon at this rate. A second shade was revealed by the projectile, looking very much like the first, and another round of merciless whipping ensued. While Perith disposed of the last monster a bit further. You have defeated True Shade, leave 167. You have defeated True Shade, leave 211. No bonus this time. While Perith was waiting for his mana to regenerate, Sofia took a look at the new, shinier powder from her whip kills. Solar Shade Dust, the remains of a destroyed True Shade killed by solar light. Can be used to fuel rituals or dye clothing and armor. Scatters all light. This powder is the whitest object in existence. Sir Scribe, are you claiming you know of every object in existence? Also, no brewing potions with this one? Interesting that the type of dust changes depending on how these dye. Are there other types of light to kill them with that will give different results? What about the light from the silver water? It does hurt them so. Anyway, I'm taking all of this too. Waiting for Perith's mana to be full, Sofia prepared more silver water jars with all that she had, almost emptying the barrel. Since she had extra time she also did a round trip to refill the barrel. That's less than I thought, and I need to keep a few for emergencies. Let's see where this gets me. The cavern split into 3 branches a bit further. Sofia went with the left one first. Fighting more shades on the way. It wasn't her lucky day, this was a dead end, the only thing waiting for her in the last portion of it was more and more shades. She kind of stopped keeping track of the kills and level UPS, deciding to completely hide the distracting menus until they were done with the shade party. Next, she explored the tunnel on the right, thinking that the correct way couldn't possibly be straightforward. She had good hope as she and Perith got better at dealing with the shades, even though a slip-up cost her a rune and one of the vampires at one point. The passive effect of her venerable physique had saved her from death with a few health points, but the shade hadn't given her any time to recover and a rune was gone. Soon after, the killer shade was gone too, reduced to dust by Peritha's vengeful fury. Reaching another dead end after fighting for a long time, and as her mana was close to zero, Sofia despaired to have done all that for so little results. But she did at least find the remains of the cut-up piece of the backpack from earlier. It turned out the unlucky adventurer hadn't been Zeros, and they hadn't survived. In fact, the skeleton was cut up in many pieces beyond recognition. Sofia might have not even known it was a skeleton if not for her familiarity with bones. There was nothing worth taking. She was almost back at the silver water pond, ready to erase the marks and wait for her mana, when her vision suddenly changed. It was subtle, but she could see now, barely, only blurry outlines, but she could see where before her vision had been a perfect black void. Venerable physique of the primeval void. Second step, become able to see in the dark, 50%/100%. Already halfway through? Nice, at this rate I'll be able to leave this place soon. Or not. I'm going to explore and loot this damn buried cathedral. I'll gnaw it to the bone. Because I can. There has to be something good in there. It's the whole point of a dungeon. But that means there's a boss too. If that's another shade. Maybe I should keep more jars. Even if I can see a bit now. Just in case of emergency. Also, come to think of it, this place too would make a great secret underground necromancer base. Kind of. I guess the Empire knows about it, so maybe not. I don't even need to do it in secret as it turned out. Nonetheless, she was still attracted by the idea. Sofia was more confident now, but she still wanted to resummon the vampires. The skeleton book had too little fog left. At best it could get her the bowman soldier and the birds. Well, birds are better than nothing. Still, she wanted to be able to keep going for longer this time, so she only put up 2 immortality runes to save some mana reserves. No matter how tempting it was to go without them, she knew very well now what would happen if a shade actually managed to reach her. There were surprisingly fewer shades in the middle passage, but they were higher level. Sofia's levels were shooting up from fighting the monsters. The more danger she was in, the more experience she would get. And she was in plenty of danger because, without the vampires, she had to throw the jars herself, which required her to come closer to the action. By the time they reached the next part of the cave complex, she had reached level 190. Unsurprisingly, nothing came of it. Only the usual 5 health, 5 stamina, and 500 mana, no skill keywords. Something about preparing the body for the level up and mana synchronization. Maybe I'll get a class or a race evolution this time. What can a human evolve into? Actually, who is even using the evolution feature? Do lizardmen turn into dragons? The disappointing level up aside, Sofia was squinting, trying to understand what she was now looking at. It looked like a regular cave bursting with stalagmites from afar, but upon closer inspection, the hundreds of things blocking the way were statues. Monsters, humans, dwarves, even the long-extinct avians, all kinds of rough stone statues. Sofia could only see their backs. She didn't think much of it besides how weird it was that they would be here. But this was supposedly a buried cathedral, and cathedrals were exactly where Sofia would expect to find loads of sculptures of all kinds. A thin mana fog permeated the air. This was something new. Usually ambient mana was more like background noise to Sofia's senses, but this was thicker and more organized. She felt that something was wrong. This cannot be natural. Is it safe to walk in there? She took a step back. Her first foot moved back. The second didn't. What? She looked down in horror, discovering that her right foot was now as much a statue as the rest of them. Perith reacted, using one of his skills that had been completely useless until now. Purification, cleanse a spherical area around the user's hand. Eliminates diseases, filth, and curses in the air, in water and on solid surfaces. Can be used through direct contact with a target to cleanse internal poisons, weak curses, and mild disease. Sofia felt the air clear up. It's a curse. Are all these statues? The weird mana fog was gone in a large sphere around her. But it was slowly closing back in. Perith grabbed her petrified foot and used purification again. It failed to reverse the process. The stone was rapidly spreading along Sofia's leg. Cut it off, she ordered, giving Perith the mithril dagger. He had to cut the leg at the thigh to be certain to cut off the curse's progress. Sofia clenched her teeth as the blade ran through her flesh and bone. It bled like a fountain. Perith helped her retreat. Fuck, I'm lucky that my foot was further in the tunnel and got affected first. What if that started with my face? Lucky was relative, as she was now missing a leg and rapidly bleeding out, with no way to heal herself because of false immortality. Just finish me off, I still have 2 runes up. Perith refused. Oh. Well. You know, that's fair. Give back the dagger, then. She wanted to finish the job, but once the dagger was in her hands, she couldn't do it. By the time she gathered her resolve, she was too weak to even injure herself. Just bring me back to the pond. I'll sleep this death off. Sofia had no idea how much time had passed, but she woke up on the ground near the pond, with Perith sitting cross-legged on the side. She wasn't in a big pool of her own blood, which was better than she had expected, but she could smell it clearly. Looking around, said pool of blood wasn't far, only that Perith had taken her out after the rune healed her. She dispelled the other rune and relaxed on the ground while her mana came back. A curse that turns people to stone. Perith wasn't affected. And purification seemed to work at cleaning up the air from it. But there must be something fueling it since it was building back up after that. Can't be a simple unattended ritual circle, not if it's been running like that for who knows how many hundreds of years. It would have long ran out of mana. I can probably get through if Perith purifies the way forward. But that's dangerous. Alternatively, I'm pretty sure it is an airborne curse, so going through the ground with the graveyard skeletons might work, but not if the zone of influence of the curse is larger than my skill's range. I'm mostly worried about what would happen if I'm fully turned to stone by this. Will the rune still save me? It does save me when I'm exploded out of existence, but what if the curse persists in my body after the healing? I shouldn't take any risks with this. I'll send the rat scout first. I can do that right now. The book appeared above Sofia's extended hands, already showcasing the rat's page for her to tear off. Chapter 144, Gibberish. The exploration of the cursed gallery full of statues was slow and tedious. The rat had indicated that this road of sculptures was several hundred meters long, and Perith could only purify it one small sphere at a time. Purification was an expensive skill, so he had to pace himself or he would run out of mana before they made it to the other side. While they waited, the curse slowly regained territory, continuously shrinking Sofia's safe zone. And of course, that also meant the path behind them was blocked by the curse too. This would be a terrible time to be under attack, but not a single shade showed up in the cursed zone. There wasn't enough space to walk between the life-size statues. Perith had to destroy some to cut open a path so Sofia could comfortably walk behind. Her vision in the complete darkness kept improving. By now she could see more details about the statues. Notably, she now understood that there were about 30 or so different ones. They were used over and over to fill the whole place. She had noticed that when she passed a group of 3 identical dwarves in the exact same position next to each other. That meant most of these weren't cursed people, but real stone statues, which was disturbing but reassuring. There was no way so many people would have discovered this place anyway. And how would they have escaped the shades? As for why there were thousands of these sculptures blocking the path in this cursed tunnel, she had no idea. She collected one of each design in her ring, because she could. Suddenly Sofia's mana senses opened up, and her perception broadened. We're finally near the exit. She had been on the lookout for the curse's source the entire time, but she found nothing. And now it looked like the next part of the dungeon wasn't cursed. It still took a few minutes, but they got there, one cast of purification at a time. The floor transitioned from the raw stone of the dark caves to clean flat stone slabs. That's new, but it's still dark. Although her new vision allowed her to see up to a few meters away as if there was low light now, it was still limited to just that. How is the progress? Venerable physique of the primeval void. Second step, become able to see in the dark, 69.556%/100%. Almost there. She tried to understand the layout of this new place with her mana senses. The only thing that was clear to her was that it was very wide and open. She could fly her if needed. Her footsteps echoed as she advanced. Judging from the reverberation, this place was indeed large enough to host a cathedral. Is it about time I see the cathedral part of the dungeon's name? I'm guessing this is the place of a recess named Shadows. If not, then what else can explain the darkness? Sofia couldn't help but look around despite her limited vision. She hoped to maybe spot a hint of light in the darkness. And she found it, but the light wasn't real, it was a slew of system notifications. You have been affected by insanity. But your skills negated the status. You have been affected by insanity. But your skills negated the status. You have been affected by insanity. But your skills negated the status. They stopped as fast as they had started. How? Because I looked in that direction. She kept looking around, and indeed the messages always came when she looked in a particular direction. Some kind of on-site insanity? I can't even see the damn thing, so how does that work? But I have a pretty good guess as to what this is. A cathedral, negative things, constant insanity. This is the apostle of a recessed if I've ever not seen one. Maybe we can have a peaceful conversation? I'm half an apostle too, after all. In any case, Sofia's decision was to go explore the other side first. She wasn't about to walk up to a potentially hostile demon with a sight radius too restricted to allow her to fully see Perith when he stood near her. She followed the wall on her left, keeping a hand on it as she explored. For an instant, something flashed in the corner of her vision. What was that? I could swear I saw something. She took a step back and moved her head around, trying to spot the ephemeral light again. She was bent over at a weird angle when she managed to see it again. A soft white light in the darkness which looked to be quite far and at least a few meters up from the ground. Sofia had the urge to fly straight to the light like a moth to a flame, but she held back. Letting Perith take the lead, as usual, they approached the far light. It led them to what seemed to be a ruined city. The architecture was unusual, and every small cubic stone brick house had an interior staircase leading to a roof terrace. Sofia could vaguely sense the interior of the houses as they were very open with large doors and windows. Not much had survived the ravages of time save for stone furniture and architecture. It was hard to say what kind of species must have lived here, but they were humanoid and of a fairly regular size. Perhaps they were human. Sofia could no longer see the light, but she knew its approximate location. Following that trail led her to a 3 stories high tower-like square house. She let Perith enter and switched to his vision. It was fully dark until he climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. A weak white glow could be seen coming from above, barely lighting the space. Perith made his way to the 3rd floor. The house was stone but it still shook under the weight of his steps. The cause for the glow was right there. An avian. Or rather, the semi-transparent, glowing ghost of an avian. Sofia had seen a lith in her ghost for enough time, there was no doubt, this was an inhabitant of the spiritual plane. Since she could see him, it meant he had a stable connection to the physical plane, it meant he had plenty of mana. Did avians even speak the common language? The avian race used to be a rather prolific ancient group of humanoids, predating even the elves themselves. They were widely credited as the founders of ritualistic magic. They were also thought to be extinct. Although Sofia had no real idea of how and why they would be, she knew this much because it was common knowledge taught in the books about rituals. They had much more pronounced animalistic traits than the beastmen from the heroes' worlds. This avian ghost in particular, at the moment sleeping on a very real stone table, looked like, well, a humanoid bird. He had talons for feet, feathery wings under his arms, and sharp clawed hands. He also had a short stubby beak, which was all that could be seen of his face from under his helmet. He was wearing armor that looked quite good but didn't seem to protect much besides his head and chest. He has the essentials covered but I guess that didn't save him. Also, I pictured avians with wings sprouting from their back like me, not these weird arm wings. There's no way they can fly. Sofia looked at her own wings. There's way. He's pretending to sleep? I have my runes anyway, what's the worst that can happen? She climbed up the building too, entering the last floor where the ghost was resting. Are you going to pretend to be asleep for long? I couldn't have seen you from the window if you had been like that from the beginning. The avian moved. A sinister laughter escaped his beak as he floated upright. Imel, Dal Sark Dan. Sialil Vakron Zirehran, he exclaimed, raising his winged arms. The environment around Sofia changed. Teleportation. Sofia couldn't give much more reaction than a raise of her eyebrows. Whoa! That's the avian language? Doesn't even sound like proper words. I guess that meant you fell right into my trap or something along those lines. It was still dark and the avian ghost was there too, but this was no longer inside the ruined buildings. Perith teleported to her side, and then she was back at the building. Decidedly, the spatial anchor bracelet is turning out to be a great investment, she remarked to herself, nodding approvingly as she admired her ugly pink orichalcum bracelet. She had had thoughts of getting rid of it after her run-in with the new magisterium. But after all, one was never safe from wild teleportation, as today had shown. In Sofia's perception, Perith was somewhere deep below the avian city. She switched to his vision. Though Perith couldn't see in the darkness, it turned out he didn't need to. He could see the squadron of avian ghosts running toward him. That was the only explanation he needed. Sanctified grounds activated. It was his time to shine. Chapter 145, Skeleton Soldier Showdown. Perith stood his ground in the dark. Name, Perith level, 190. Health, 217,978/217,978. Stamina, 41,983/41,983. Mana, 18,350/19,000. He was ready. This time he could directly see his enemies, which was more than what he had to deal with until now. Sofia was observing the enemies in question through his vision. 10 avian ghosts. Various armor types and weapons, at least 2 mages. Depending on their levels it might be tough. Retreat if you are at risk, their only experience, we can get it somewhere else. Be careful of ambushes, the one who teleported me there is gone, he could bring reinforcements. I'm leaving you to fight here, I'll try out another one of Scripture's rituals. The necromancy grimoire might have been a trap from Scripture, but the knowledge inside had all proven to be the real thing until now. She still had 3 unused rituals she knew from there, they were impractical and oddly specific in their function, but one happened to fit the current situation quite well. Its name was the Ghostly Ward. Ghosts couldn't enter it or it would absorb their mana and leave them weakened or dead in a matter of seconds. That was it, it was meant to protect necromancers when they used ghosts as part of bigger rituals. She had never used it. It was impractical as it required a large amount of fresh blood, but Sofia could summon that. She got to work drawing it with a chunk of chalk on the house's floor. Perith's weapon morphed into a huge great shield hiding most of his massive body as he charged forward. His sanctified grounds were almost 400 meters in diameter now and the avian ghosts were a mere 50 meters away, this whole place was now his battlefield. Attacks flew out of the avian mage's staves. Perith couldn't see them, but he could hear the roaring of the fire coming for him. Steady behind his shield, he kept running. The magical attacks exploded on contact, the heat washing over him. He took no damage. The avian warriors stood ready to stop him, protecting the mages, while 2 ghosts with lighter gear spread out to either side. For whatever reason, these ghosts were grounded. They could move much faster and nimbly than Alith could when she was in ghost form but didn't seem to fly. Perith kept charging. There were 4 swordsmen, 2 of which had shields, and 2 spearsmen, all waiting for him. Perith reached the group. He abruptly stopped before being in the range of the spears and lashed out with his weapons that had morphed from a shield into an absurdly long katana. The blade collided with the ghostly shields of the swordsmen, leaving deep dents in the ethereal weaponry. The spearman ghosts riposted, stabbing at the neck and armpit of his armor of light, failing to injure him despite their best efforts. Perith spun around, pushing the spears aside and bringing his katana up in a high arc. The blade sliced through the air, cutting one of the avian spearmen in half whose ghostly body exploded on the spot in harmless white particles of light. The other 3 warriors reacted quickly, but Perith was faster. He darted forward, his blade changed to a spiked fist, striking one of the swordsmen in the head with a straight punch. The avian warrior stumbled backward, his uncorporeal body exploding in a flash of bright light as he touched the ground. The 2 defensive warriors were now in close proximity, raising up their shields. The remaining spearmen and swordsmen circled him warily, waiting for an opening. Perith was outnumbered, but he had no fear. Suddenly, one of the avian mages let out a shrill cry. Perith heard a sound coming from above, he rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack that turned out to be a lightning bolt, but the swordsman had been ready to intercept him. He managed to land a heavy hit as Perith moved out of the way of the magical attack, cutting deep into his armor and damaging his ribs. For the first time in this fight, Perith lost some health. He had quickly disposed of 2 of the ghosts but he had targeted them because they looked the weakest and had no shields. The other ones were by no means feeble. Health, 187,461/217,978. Perith sprang to his feet, ready to continue the fight. He used his momentum and advantageous reach to land an uppercut on the swordsman who had injured him and had still been busy recuperating from his strike. The avian swordsman was sent flying up in the air. Another shrill cry came from the second mage, but Perith, who still had his fist up from the uppercut, morphed the fist weapon to a great shield again. The lightning bolt was absorbed by the shield and Perith could focus on dodging the assault of the spearmen and the two shield warriors with nimble back steps. He heard a high-pitched whistling sound from behind. Something collided with the back of his helmet with extreme force, then a second projectile hit the same spot almost simultaneously, damaging his skull. Health, 139,896/217,978. These were the avians with light armor, spread out to the far corners of the arena. Perith turned around and rushed to the closest one. He was reloading a glowing ghostly crossbow. The spearman tried to block Perith's way only to be shoved aside by a heavy shield bash that sent him tumbling back. Seeing he was targeted, the avian crossbowman stopped reloading, latching his crossbow to his belt and spreading out his wings. He crouched slightly and was going to take off. Perith wasn't about to let that happen. Chains of the Four Seals. Perith sped up as he heard the now familiar sound of lightning coming down. Narrowly avoiding the attack that struck behind him, he reached the struggling crossbowman who had only had time to break one of the four chains. The great shield became a war hammer. The strike from Perith was merciless, smashing against the avian's light helmet from the side. The birdman's head exploded like a crushed ripe fruit. Another crossbow bolt came from the second crossbowman, glancing off against Perith's armor. Once again, the two shielded warriors approached, and they tried to box Perith into the corner of the arena. The remaining spearmen and swordsmen weren't far behind, and the mages were worryingly silent. The warhammer became a giant claymore which Perith swung in a wide arc above his head. He was giving his opponents a wide opening, but the shield warrior's plan was to keep on the defensive, staying barely out of Perith's reach. Gravity well. The avian warriors were taken by surprise and failed to resist the sudden pull, leaving them open and in range. Perith's strike was devastating, cutting both warriors in half at the hip in a single swipe. But he had no time to celebrate. He heard the mages again, and the mana disturbance was so large that even he could feel it. Unable to see the attacks with too little time to recover from the momentum of his swing and swap to the great shield, he could only protect his upper body with his four flying shields of light. It was uncertain what had hit him, but he was sent flying by the impact. The force of the spell was devastating, breaking many bones. Maybe it was thanks to the enchantments carved on them, but the most important ones held out. It also turned out the remaining spearmen had similarly suffered from the spell, dying on the spot. So there was at least some good coming out of it. Health, 53,101/217,978. Only one of the melee fighters remained, the one who had injured Perith and received an uppercut. He was in terrible shape and hadn't expected Perith to recover from the magical attack so fast. He could do nothing to defend himself against the rapier piercing through his skull. Perith blocked a flaming ghostly crossbow bolt flying at him with his left hand. At this point, he had the timing for the bolts well figured out. Finally free to move, he rushed the mages. The dozens of meters separating them were nothing to his ogre legs. One of the mages tried to cast a spell, but nothing happened, while the other one was now protected by a cubic magic barrier. The unprotected avian mage panicked, throwing away his staff which disappeared as it left its hands. He took off, much faster than the arbalest had, managing to get some 6 meters up into the air before Perith reached his level. Perith's weapon became a large clawed glove covering his right hand. He jumped. At the apex of his jump, he was face to face with the fleeing avian ghost. He caught him by a leg as he fell. Perith slammed this mage into the magic barrier of the other. His back bent backward at a very unnatural angle on the barrier's corner before his body exploded in soft white light particles. One punch later, and the barrier protecting the second mage who had been frantically channeling some kind of longer spell was no more. 2 punches later, and the second mage was no more. He fell back, more lifeless than he already was, his staff producing a sonorous sound as it fell off his hand and hit the ground. His body exploded like the others. Only the second arbalest was left. He was currently in the process of escaping by phasing through the ground. He looked up at Perith, then back down. Perith rushed, only to see the top point of the avian's helmet disappear through the ground right under his nose. The glove of light changed to the spiked fist from before. Perith hit the stone slab under his feet. The cracked stone revealed the top of the avian's head. The fist changed back to claws. Perith's hand tightened around the avian ghost's helmet and scalp. He pulled up. The avian's body was stuck inside the ground and his head was inside Perith's hand. Once again, it all disappeared in a weak burst of silent white fireworks. Perith was left alone in the dark. He sat down, waiting for his mana to come back. Holy! Perith, are you okay? Chapter 146, Glutton. Sofia had barely started to draw her ritual on the ground, but she couldn't help switching to Perith's vision considering the crazy kill notifications she got and the wild jumps in his health points. She feared for him at some points, but now that the deed was done, she was left to contemplate the slew of system notifications that had appeared before her eyes. Bewildered, she still changed back to her own vision. The avian ghost that had teleported her wasn't one of the fighters that Perith had killed, he had disappeared right after setting off his trap. Since he was a potential danger, she first focused on finishing the setup of her ritual. Once it was up and running, she sat in the center and finally allowed herself to go through the messages. You have defeated Avian Spectre Spearman, Leave 187. You have defeated Avian Spectre Swordsman, Leave 199. You have defeated Avian Spectre Arbalest, Leave 230. You have defeated Avian Spectre Warrior, Leave 249. You have defeated Avian Spectre Warrior, Leave 210. You have defeated Avian Spectre Spearman, Leave 199. You have defeated Avian Spectre Swordsman, Leave 238. You have defeated Avian Spectre Mage, Leave 232. You have defeated Avian Spectre Mage, Leave 249. You have defeated Avian Spectre Arbalest, Leave 202. You gained a level. *9. So much experience. Compared to the Thromber or the Shade kills, these were worth much more experience for some reason. Sofia wondered if it was because they had actual classes, or simply the intensity and novelty of the fight. Either way, she was now stuck before a filter for the second time. You have reached maximum experience. Congratulations, you have reached the third filter. Your potential will be revealed. You will no longer gain experience. Please proceed to the trial site, Ranking Spire, distance, 2579153 m. Ranking Spire? That's the thing no one's allowed to talk about? What is it ranking? Could be many things. But it's most likely the obvious thing. Ranking the people. Also, I knew this was on the Beastman continent, but that's quite far. Well, between the runes and the ritual I should be safe here. I'd summon something to be on the lookout, but they wouldn't see a thing because of the dark. She returned to Perith's point of view, which was complete darkness. A shame I can't go there anymore. There's no way the graveyard skeletons get me so far deep underground. I'm pretty sure there should be a way I can teleport to Perith, but I have no idea how to even go about that. Maybe Cardinal could help with this. I'll go to the Kavaus Vasparian embassy when I meet up with Alith. If I remember that by then and don't get sidetracked. So I won't actually go, I guess. Perith couldn't heal himself without using up his daily activation of Greater Heal, so he was stuck with around 18,000 health because he lost the bonus from his zone. That was liable to get him killed in one hit from the ghosts should he meet more, so Sofia ordered him to come back if he had to fight. When his mana was full, he got up. He walked slowly in the dark until he found the wall, and using it to guide his way forward, he searched for the entrance the avian spectres had come from. He found it on the second wall of the rectangular space. It seemed like any other dark corridor. Sofia couldn't really tell what was going on, so she waited. She could hear the sound of Perith walking for a bit, then it seemed he turned around. Now, if Sofia understood what was going on correctly, Perith was on all fours around the middle of the arena, doing something she couldn't understand. Until Sofia heard a sound near her real body. Panicked, she opened her eyes, only to find Perith standing there holding something. That was you. Don't scare me like that. Did you teleport back to show me this? The thing he held in his hands was a staff just like the ethereal ones the avian mages held. Wait. The level 249 mage dropped this when he died. It was a real staff. I didn't even connect the dots together. The staff no longer looked like a ghostly weapon, it was very real, and the ambient mana curved and swirled around it like this weapon was its master. It was made out of a gnarly piece of black primus wood. The top of the staff featured a realistic life-sized carving of an avian's clawed hand with its fingers curled like it was about to attack someone. Sofia identified it. Avian King Magi Scepter, the ancient and precious staff of an avian archmagi. It has multiple magic-enhancing enchantments on it. Identify reached level 2. No way. Sofia instantly pulled up Identify's description. It used to be a single sentence, but now there were two more. Identify gives some information on target objects or people. You can now identify objects currently being worn or used by people. You can now pay additional mana, once per target, to perform a deeper analysis of a magic object and get more details on its functionalities. That's about what I expected considering Tyrene was able to get information on the sand pendant when I was wearing it. And the merchant who sold me the anchor bracelet also tried to identify my ring while I had it on. Of course, the new function costs mana. And of course, it appears now when my mana is limited and I have an object to use it on. How much is it for this thing? Avian King Magi Scepter, Advanced Analysis equals 55,555 mana. Holy hell, that's expensive. Oh whatever, I need to heal Perith too. Sofia felt safer with Perith around. She asked him to stick a hand out of the window so she could heal him. She also discarded her immortality runes to start to get mana back, and after a lot of waiting, she performed the advanced identify. She could clearly see the mana departing from her body to surround the scepter and surround it, poking at it, washing all over it. Whatever was happening, Sofia had no control over it. The rest of her system was frozen when she tried to access it, so it had to be the scribe who was taking care of this. Little by little, the mana she had sent disappeared as it made its way in and around the scepter. Once no mana was left, it still took some time for the new prompt to appear. Avian King Magi Scepter, the ancient and precious staff of an avian archmagi. It has multiple magic-enhancing enchantments on it. This Black Primus scepter features an enchanted dragonhorn core and has been melded with orichalcum to ensure maximum durability. Despite the ravages of time, it remains pristine in form and function. Must be primed to unlock advanced functions, 0/10000000000 mana. Basic functions, fueled by ambient mana or the user's if lack thereof. Absorbs the backlash of forcefully cancelled channeling. Cannot be damaged by the user's magic. Cannot be forcefully unequipped. Attracts and absorbs weak magical projectiles aimed at the user. Advanced functions, requires priming. Halves channeling time. Halves the mana cost per second of sustained magic. The hand at the top has been designed to be able to either hold catalysts or be used as a melee weapon depending on the user's preference. This weapon has been tainted by the eternal shadow, it has a mind of its own. Make it yours. And I thought the level 200 skill points 1 million points price was a pain to pay. Even with the sun ritual, it would take me years to prime this staff, whatever that means. I have to say, the effects are worth it though. 5 seconds for an angel bolt? 1.5 for the spine? 3 for the graveyard? The runes would be down to 5 minutes too. The mana cost per second works for the spine, the graveyard, and the heal, dropping them all to 50 mana per second from 100. This thing is huge. It has a fucking dragonhorn inside. This. I need to get this soulbound. At all costs. Avians are credited for the creation and popularization of rituals. Yeah, I get why. Enchantments are rituals too. Well, it's not primed yet though, and nowhere near it. The other effects aren't anything exceptional, especially since the magical protection thing is only for weak projectiles. Better than nothing though. The second to last line is more than a bit ominous. Sofia stopped being bewildered at the description and grabbed the black scepter. If there was anyone she found trustworthy, it was her scribe. It was quite hefty even for her level 199 body and was about as long as Alith was tall. She instantly felt a connection between her mana and the scepter and understood what they cannot be forcefully unequipped meant. It was for all intent and purposes the item version of Way of the Fool's no falling effect. She was convinced not even Cooley could rip that out of her hands if she tried. Or she could. She could just rip my whole arm off and that would work. The legendary Midnisit Catalyst appeared in the palm of Sofia's hand. Midnisit Catalyst, a masterfully crafted spell catalyst made of gold and midnisit. Enhances the speed of mana projectiles by up to 50%. Item level, 150. Grade, Legendary. If I can cast the bolts through the scepter and the catalyst. Sofia looked at the catalyst and the scepter's avian hand part, the catalyst was too big to fit in there. Still, she brought the blue crystal ball near the scepter. The hand, which was solid wood, actually opened to accommodate the catalyst. The fingers closed around the artifact, the avian hand changing, morphing into something new. A skeletal hand. The description of the scepter was still open on the side of Sofia's vision. Letter by letter, the name changed. Sofia's Shadow Scepter. Chapter 147, Skill Issues. Sofia's Shadow Scepter must be primed to unlock advanced functions. 1013/10000000000 mana. Missed by 13. Admiring the incredible item, Sofia was starting to realize how wasteful she had been. Every second spent regenerating mana when she was already full was a second where her skills could have been leveling up. And now that her immediate focus was shifting to leveling her skills for the trial, this scepter and its ridiculous requirement appeared. I bet Velour could charge it up in a day or two. I bet she would want to keep it too. Especially with the last lines of the description. Can't ask Astelia to help with this even if with her we could charge it up twice as fast, and Cooley is a fighter. I've been putting it off but it might be time to find that T.L.D.R lich. If I want the best shot at the trial I should do it now. It's a bit dangerous but... There are a lot of things to take care of before the trial. But first, I have a skill to upgrade and a dungeon to explore. I don't think this was the boss. I haven't even stepped foot into the namesake cathedral yet. Before leaving the safety of her ghost-repelling ritual and starting her exploration again, she spent some time rereading her skills and her status. She had to replace the immortality runes anyway, and she wanted to summon the High Priest this time. Venerable Physique of the Primeval Void. Second step, become able to see in the dark, 71.316%/100%. Didn't go up much. Or rather went up quite a lot considering all I did was find the city and enter the house. My vision is still quite limited. Name, Sofia Afinareth. Age, 20. Class, Saintess. Level, 199. Health, 5995/5995, 5 level plus 5000 filter 2. Stamina, 1994/1995, 5 level plus 1000 filter 2. Mana, 948/89000, minus 10,000 Alith, minus 5000 Scribe Link, 5000 base plus, 500 level 1. Specialization, Eclipse Skeleton. Alteration chance, 97%. Active skills, 7/7. Spine of the Black Sun, level 122. Heal Undead, level 64. Summon Blood, level 85. Angel's Bolt, level 100. Maiden Banshee, level 199, LV.199. Graveyard of the Righteous, level 108. False Immortality, level 3. Passive skills, 6/6. Blessing of the Deep, 2/4. Armor of Bones, level 100. Pristine Essence. Valkyria's Rehofen of Sorrow. Holy Wings of Undeath. Venerable Physique of the Primeval Void, Second Step Shadow Gathering Realm. Classless skills, 6/6. Fast Reading, level 52. Way of the Fool, level 19. Poker Face, level 36. Identify, level 2. Sanctity, level 77. Mana Manipulation. Special Skills, 1. The Book of Skeletons. Summoned Heroes, 3/4. LV.199 Parath, Holy Ogre Eclipse Skeleton. LV.199 Alith, Maiden Banshee. LV.199 Book of Skeletons, Book. Mark of Afinareth. Available active skills. Command, Soul that none can resist. Restore, infuse the target with mana 2. Available passive skills. Blessed Hands, shape mana directly through the hands. With suffering, all those who touch it except the Necromancer with long-lasting agony. Marrow, Error. Runic, you are one with the runes of Dominion, in a spherical area around you. Everything is going up nicely. While I'm waiting for my mana. I wonder if it isn't time to get rid of Pristine Essence. Pristine Essence, you are the unblemished. Immunity to magically induced memory alterations. Augmented resistance to perception alterations. The memory alteration thing seems useless now. Afinareth's mark already helps against any kind of soul tampering, and Pristine Essence doesn't even work for stuff like alcohol. Also, I'm pretty sure the whole fake reality of the first trial was a big perception alteration and it didn't help back then. The resistance to perception alteration isn't worth that much, as evidenced by, well, this whole dungeon. If the darkness isn't a perception alteration, I don't know what it is. And the unblemished thing? I don't think it really did anything. Maybe my skin is a bit shinier than it used to? I don't think that warrants keeping the slot. The only time I can recall it being even somewhat useful is when I got controlled by domination and could still see around me. Which didn't help. Plus, with the second trial approaching, I'll have to be rebuilt again when I pass. And I got screwed for having pristine essence the last time, making it more painful than it should have. Yet I think it's better to let it go. Losing an immunity seems bad, but I might as well take a skill to be immune to stubbing my toe at this point. At least it would be useful sometimes. But what do I get instead? I'll get a new passive skill slot at 200 I think, but I'll also get new keywords, so it's fine if I use up what I have. And I've been thinking about this for a bit. Blessed Hands Marrow Dominion. I'm not sure what it would do, but Dominion over Marrow through Blessed Hands sounds like something I could use. I'm hoping for either something that allows me to give myself custom upgrades through Dominion over my own Marrow, or something that allows me to do the same for skeletons through my hands. Either that or a passive healing skill of some sort. There are a few other ways it could go, but I'm hoping for something very basic. You know what I mean, Sir Scribe. We're on the same page, right? I'm trusting you with this. The keywords should be exactly what's needed for you to be able to make what I want. Please. Could have gone for runic instead of marrow, but with blessed from blessed hands also being in the equation, I'm too scared of it becoming a skill related to scripture. And runic dominion is the same to some extent. You have lost the passive, pristine essence. Sofia's vision suddenly got a bit darker. That was it for the changes. I suppose it did help a little. Hey, what's done is done. You have acquired the passive skill, Dominion. You have acquired the passive skill, Marrow. You have acquired the passive skill, Blessed Hands. It wasn't until later, when Sofia was busy carving the second rune on her body under the guard of Perith and the High Priest skeleton, that her new passive skill was finally ready. The name of it was enough to put a smile on her face. Bone Dominus, the Saintess can control, fuse and reshape all inert bones in a 10 skill level, meters radius. The Saintess can reshape all bones their hands touch. This will make them unable to be used as new skeletons, except as constructs. The Saintess can create and control up to 1 skill level, Blessed Marrow Bone Construct. The construct is sturdier than its original parts and is considered a golem and a skeleton. For each nearby Blessed Marrow Bone Construct, the Saintess and all skeletons in the construct's reach receive the following effects. Regenerate 0.5% maximum health every second. Bones are 10% sturdier. Sofia couldn't wait to try it out, but there were still some details she noted. There are multiple parts that surprise me. The whole construct thing is a bit weird. The scaling makes me think this is probably another compressed level skill. No way this can go up to level 100, the effect stacking would be insane. Also, that makes heal undead almost obsolete. I can still use it to heal a lith though, and it heals much faster than the constructs, with a longer range. The best part though is how it doesn't mention the mana usage, so it must be minimal like the other passives. And then, reshape all bones they touch. All bones. Her first instinct was to change the shape of her wings. Like clay that you work on, it was indeed reshaping, meaning no bone was created or lost, but the form changed. She changed her wings to look like long arms sprouting from her back. Her control was lackluster, but it worked. She still could only naturally move them like they were wings though, and had to use the skill to move the fingers one by one. Impractical. She reformed her wings to normal and broke the tip on the left one. Can I stick it back on? She could. Then she took out some of her cut wings that were in her storage and tried to add them to her actual wings. That didn't work. She discovered that after a few seconds of being detached from her body, the bone could no longer be repaired like that. I can probably still fix internal injuries though. But my own bones aren't inert bones, so I need to touch them with my hands to reshape them. Thinking that, she tried to reshape one of her fingers, giving it a slight curvature. That was kind of disquieting to look at, so she fixed it. Guess my hands count as touching their own bones. It's very versatile. And if I can touch someone else's bones, they're dead. What stops me from reshaping their ribs to pierce the heart? Actually, that's kind of useless. If I can touch their ribs, I don't need that to kill them. But what if I use the pointy end of my wings to stab someone in the forehead or the temple? Might surprise someone, and the instant I touch their skull. Sofia shivered at her own ideas. She decided to explore the less macabre parts of the skill next. First, she wanted to try displacing Perith's spinal spikes to all be on his head, but that didn't work. Matter from one bone couldn't be transferred to another one, but she could do things like change the shape of his horns to make them curved like Karen's goat horns. Overall, she found this part of the skill to be a bit underwhelming. The last two things she wanted to try were the control of inert bones, which she still hadn't used, and the making of constructs which she didn't fully understand. At least the actual control of the skill had been very intuitive until now. She dumped dozens of her cut bone wings supply on the floor and tried to work with that. The more things she tried and the wider the smile on her face got. Absolute control. This was what she had. If she wanted to fuse all the bones and make a sphere with it, she could. If she wanted to make the sphere fly up, then change to a huge bone hammer, she also could. And most importantly, if she wanted to add or remove pieces to and from her bone armor, she absolutely could. She took out hundreds of cut wings and used them to make her armor thicker. It worked well up to a point where she could no longer move due to the weight and blocked joints. Adding a ton of mass maybe isn't the way to go. One of her first instincts was to go near a wall, to extend her armored hand, and move the matter of her armor, reshaping it to form a long spike coming out of her palm. The bone spike formed, piercing the wall. Oh! This skill is crazy. The possibilities. Endless. Reshaping and controlling the bones around her required a lot of focus, but there wasn't any real limit to what she could do. She couldn't figure out how it worked, but it used no mana at all. She tried to emulate the complex shape of Orvod's move with the stone lotuses, and she could almost do it well, but the shape of the petals had a lot of room for improvement. She couldn't do like him and fly on a cube of bones though. While the bones could float, they didn't have much force to them unless they were grounded. She played around doing all sorts of shapes with the bones, and finally, she decided to try the construct function. She reshaped all the bones she had taken out into a great shield, mimicking Perith's usual design. How do I make that a construct though? She tried a few things before figuring out that she had to pump it full of mana, which finished emptying her reserves. The bone shield hardened visibly, taking on a golden sheen and glow reminiscent of the state the mist skeletons were in when invincible under the sunlight. Sofia could feel the effect of the blessing trying to heal her, though it did nothing as she was full life and had the runes up. She looked at Perith, raising the shield in front of her. Hit it, don't hold back. Perith's hit was heavy, it sent Sofia tumbling back until her back was up against the wall. But the shield was almost intact, the scratches on its surface visibly healing by themselves. Great! She could store it without trouble but would lose the healing effect as it wasn't nearby anymore. I can probably use that on parts of my armor too. I guess the helmet is a good choice, and so is the chest plate. There must be more than I don't understand about this whole construct concept, but I'll look into it later when I'm not in a hostile dungeon. Done with her testing, she had to say, the scribe didn't hold back. This was a skill worthy of the keywords used and the slot taken. Now I need to regenerate my mana and redo the runes all over again. Sofia dispelled her runes and sat on the floor. Chapter 148, Families. Sofia explored the lost avian city in the following hours. Not much besides the stone walls had survived the passage of time. There were some parts of the city where the air was thick with curses. Perith's purify cut a path through them. She understood after the fact that they were random and not linked to anything interesting, which was a disappointment. She never found a way that led to the place Perith had fought in. Street after street, her vision became clearer and clearer until it suddenly opened up all at once. She could see in this cavern as well as during a bright day. There was no more darkness, no more shadows, everything was clear everywhere she looked as she turned around. Can I turn it off? Sofia found herself in the dark once again. Yeah, let's not do that. Venerable physique of the primeval void. First step, become more resilient to explosions, 50%. Second step, become able to see in the dark, 100%. Third step, become able to breathe light, 0/100%. Fourth step, overcome absolute cold. Fifth step. Current step training method, hold your breath in the brightest environment you can find. The new step is, different from what I expected. Breathe light? How does that even work? Am I becoming a plant? Well, at least the training doesn't sound so bad. All I need is a bright place, shouldn't be too hard. But I won't be able to do that in this dungeon. Done with her main goal for entering this dungeon, she decided to speed things up. Since she could finally see, she was confident enough to fly up. The cavern was humongous, there was easily 100 meters between the ground and the stalactite-riddled ceiling. Flying up she had a good view of the whole avian city. There were a few interesting-looking buildings she hadn't explored yet, but most importantly, she could finally see the buried cathedral. When she had entered this main cavern, she had turned to the left and found the city. The cathedral was on the right. It was an impressive work of architecture, and it was preserved much better than the city, but most impressive were the messages she was getting when she looked at it. You have been affected by insanity. But your skills negated the status. You have been affected by insanity. But your skills negated the status. You have been affected by insanity. But your skills negated the status. There has to be an apostle in there. Definitely. What is it going to be? Apostle of the Dark? Sofia felt uneasy, so she decided to get her third rune ready. If she was to be honest, without false immortality, she would turn back now and leave this cursed dungeon to never return. The runes gave her the confidence to keep going. The high priest, that she resummoned at some point after he expired during the exploration, still had about an hour of lifespan left when she got done. More than enough, let's get this done. Sofia decided to land and enter through an open window on the upper floors of the cathedral. There was no reason to announce her arrival to a probably hostile apostle. She expected another disfigured demon. But on the off chance they were neutral, she wouldn't blast them as she had done for the Son of Dread. Else she could have double-bolted the cathedral from the other side of the cave. The interior of the cathedral was dense with cursed air. Still, she advanced, letting Perith's purification skill lead the way. They had entered by a side of the building's highest floor, which was a long corridor. The avian statues decorating the walls were of impressive craftsmanship. Who did they represent? These don't look like gods, they're religious figure? To navigate the place, Sofia followed the insanity prompts, which led her to step foot on an archway overlooking the main chamber of the cathedral. As Perith cleansed the way forward, the sacred place revealed itself to Sofia. Holy! We found the avians! The scene was unbelievable. The cathedral's stone bench had been piled against the wall, everything pushed to the side to make room. Room for a giant ritual circle drawn by people, avians. Sofia could see the similarities to the circle of skulls she had drawn for the ritual of sorrow. The avians, clearly real people of different builds and appearance, had all shared a similar fate, turned to stone, kneeling toward an altar, inserting a knife into their own hearts. There had to be at least 1,000 of them. On an elevated stone platform at the very back of the cathedral sat 3 avians in luxurious garments, one of which had a strange conical hat and the other 2 had large crowns. They had been overlooking the ritual. They held no knife but were turned to stone all the same. Their expression had slightly faded from their face, eroded by the changing eras, but Sofia could tell that they looked uneasy. I don't think these 3 knew they were going to be a part of the whole petrification thing. The only thing that Sofia couldn't quite see was the central altar of the ritual as it was under the archway she was standing on. The apostle is on the altar. She could only see the 2 protruding ends of the altar, made of black, stone-looking material. Black Primus resin bricks. Just like the pyramid. Someone spoke. A very feminine voice, it was all avian language gibberish, but the sad and pleading tone was as human as it could get. It came from the altar below. What do I do about this? Should I go down? What if it's some kind of trap? This girl down there sounds really desperate though. This might very well be the most dangerous thing I've ever done. In this reality at least. I can't even escape fast because the curse is closing back up the path behind me. Unless I trust that the rune can save me from it. A bit too risky. I'd go out and send Perith but he still sees nothing. What a headache this place is. I need to get away, risking a fight here is too dangerous. The person down on the altar was still desperately trying to communicate, in avian. When she heard Sofia take a few steps back, she started violently sobbing in between her words. Fucking. Ugh. Can you understand me? Sofia tried. Silence followed for a few unbearable seconds. And then the gibberish avian talk started again, with a renewed pleading energy. Sofia couldn't understand a single word but she could clearly feel the same kind of dread, the same kind of despair, the same pain in this woman's voice that had once been her siblings, as a kid, hopeless, begging for their next meal with both their lives on the line. Sofia closed her eyes, trying her best to suppress the bittersweet memories of her sister. All right, you win. I'm coming. There was no obvious way down, and she couldn't fly or jump because of the curse. Similarly, if she wanted to search for the real stairs down, it would take forever for Perith to cleanse the way. If the curse is in the air. Wait, I do know of another way to disperse that. How did I not see that before? It was so obvious. How does it work with the staff? Usually, Sofia couldn't use Angel's Bolt while holding something. She discovered that it didn't apply to the staff. The lightning gathered and formed a lance, except that instead of the usual wild plasma javelin, it was contained around the staff, almost like a coating. To save some mana, this was the spell version of the skill. The pleadings from the person below had stopped. This worked quite well at repelling the curse, or to be exact, at consuming it, the curse mana seeping into the spell, feeding the lightning. It wasn't what Sofia had expected, and she freaked out when she saw the curse from outside the purified zone closing in, but it disappeared before it could even reach the staff itself. Good enough. Sofia still wasn't about to jump down, however. She ran through the cathedral, searching for a way down as she burned the curse away. It didn't hurt as bad as it used to, her armor held out better than usual. Perith was holding the Blessed Marrow Great Shield. 10% more resilient is much more noticeable than I thought. Sofia couldn't stop cursing at herself for not having thought of that way to deal with the curse sooner. It was so much better, saving a lot of time and effort. All she had to do was to hold a bolt and run. It still took her a while to find the way. The cathedral was surprisingly large from the inside, and she had to dispel the bolt after a while. A fully formed one, she normally couldn't dispel without backlash. Built the staff worked as advertised, completely negating that. After waiting for a few seconds for her armor that was glowing red to cool down, she cast another bolt and started running again. Finally, she found her way down and soon entered the main chamber by a side door. Entering the main chamber from the ground floor this time, she had a direct view of the altar. The avian demon was pinned down on the altar by metallic shackles covered in runes, emitting a black glow. Sofia couldn't see much from where she was. The altar was higher than her head, but three things were certain. This was the person who had been talking. She was crying and repeating the same few avian words over and over again. And she was an apostle. Just like she could see the hero's levels without identify, Sofia could see information on that apostle, which she thought was due to her authority as an honorary apostle. Evranarium line, Daughter of Curse, LV 299. Chapter 149, Dangerous Demon Dance. Sofia had good hopes that this would be resolved without a fight. Until she took one, last, fateful step toward the altar. The shackled demon laying on the altar stopped struggling. She had been in the middle of one of her incomprehensible sentences, one she had repeated at least 10 times when a ritual she hadn't seen activated. It was hidden within the floor's decorative patterns. The world froze. To Sofia, this wasn't a new sensation. Cooley had done it, and so had Afinareth. She was, however, now starting to understand that it wasn't something as simple as time magic or space magic. This was the sign of something much grander. She could see it now. This was the effect of the planes collapsing together. Like a superposition of colors and states of existence. One thing wasn't frozen, however, the bolt. It kept condensing over her staff. Red runes appeared everywhere on the immobile demon's body, shining like the sun was burning inside of her. The mana emitted was such that it was washing over the petrification curse and the darkness. It pushed aside the stone statues, cleared the center of the cathedral of debris. And then the mana stopped. The runes dimmed, but the demon was shaking, vibrating to the rhythm of an inexistent quake. The angel's bolt around her staff had absorbed ungodly amounts of mana from the wave. It looked brighter than when she double-casted the actual skill version in the Thromber mines. The world regained its usual shape. She exploded. From the second Sofia had become frozen, she had been trying to summon her blessed shield construct from Bone Dominus. Any kind of protection would help. In that one instant while the world unfroze, the golden shield appeared in front of her and all of her other items disappeared into her storage ring, except for the staff and spatial anchor bracelet, which couldn't be so easily moved. Explosion met explosion, and the buried cathedral was no more. The hero, Perith, has succumbed. Sofia woke up from her death 3 seconds later, falling. Before she could even open her eyes, she spread her wings and checked her stats. Health, 5995/5995. Stamina, 1995/1995. Mana, 5200/89,000. That's not a lot of mana. She also had 2 runes left. Sofia finally opened her eyes. The cavern had become a gigantic empty sphere with burning half-molten walls. Nothing of anything remained besides her newly reformed body, the blessed marrow construct she caught a glimpse of, floating on a lake of magma, and a black ball floating at the center of the empty space. LV 299. No wonder Perith died. I lost the storage ring. I can feel the link to it. Inside the magma. She quickly looked around but found no exit anywhere, and the black ball was starting to deform. As if something was kicking it from the inside. Struggling to get out. And it was getting bigger by the second. Fight fire with fire. Sofia squandered what was left of her mana, summoning a big ball of blood high above the blessed shield. For the first time in forever, her mana hit 0. She felt the skill tug at the corners of her consciousness. She welcomed it. Vakariya's Rihafen of sorrow. Sofia's heart burst out of her chest, still connected by the arteries, still beating, it was all black. Instinctively, she knew what she had to do. There was no questioning the process. She grabbed her heart. And she brought it to her mouth. Her skin changed. Her missing tail grew. Her demonic leathery grey skin covered the base of her wings. Her vision widened. Like a monstrous egg hatching, whatever had to come out of the black ball burst out at the same time. Sofia instantly understood that whatever had happened to the son of dread she had killed with her first ever angel's bolt, whatever had turned him into the abomination it had become, it had just happened to this avian apostle too. Sofia's attention was immediately drawn to the monstrous avian, towering over her at 10 meters tall. Its body was covered in layers of purple flesh that looked molten and constricting. The creature's massive feet were adorned with talons the size of war picks. Its wings were a sight to behold, with no feathers in sight, only soft and fleshy yellow protrusions resembling long flower petals. But what truly captivated Sofia was the creature's head, or lack thereof. Where its neck should have been, there was only a gaping hole. Instead, the tiny head was perched on 2 black outgrowths that sprouted from its shoulders like elongated collarbones. The faceless head boasted only one feature, a stubby black beak that stood out against the creature's vibrant purple skin. Sofia snuck a peek at her stats. Health, 179 280/179 280. Stamina, 179 280/179 280. Mana, 0/179 280. Higher than it used to. Double in fact. Does it double each filter? She still had the same name, level, and class, her skills were still there, she just had no mana. Not waiting for the other demon to have the first move, Sofia plunged down to get her shield. She still had 2 runes, so the regeneration from the blessing wouldn't help her but it would repair her armor, and she really needed that because it usually required mana. During the plunge she reviewed what tools she still had at her disposal. The wings are still there, work perfectly, armor can't repair yet, can't take the bones out of the storage without mana either. Bone Dominus should work if I can touch that thing's bones. If it even has any. But the blessed great shield will help. The staff should be out there somewhere too but it won't help. Way of the Fool's thinking speed is doing its best work right now, and sanctity is probably the best thing I have going for me. Nothing much in terms of active spells. Back to the basics. I only have 5 minutes before the skill ends and leaves me as a weakened and monoless human. Red magma splashed around as she grabbed the great shield in passing and flew right back up. A shame I can't change the form after it's a blessed construct without it losing the blessing. The avian demon let out a piercing screech as it fully unfurled its wings. Sofia soared through the air, her tail whipping behind her as she ascended to meet the monstrous avian demon, unfazed by its immense size. The 2 demons clashed mid-air, each striking with incredible speed and strength. Their physical strength was equally matched. As they fought, they flew up and up, trying to take the advantage on each other. The petal-looking wings of the avian were sharper than mithril blades, they left gashes even on the blessed great shield Sofia hid behind. Its talons struck with the strength of a falling tree. Sofia parried however she could, raising her shield, kicking away the talons. The flying avian tried to get under the shield with a high knee but Sofia intercepted the blow with the bottom rim of the shield. She used that force to launch herself back in an aerial backflip. Her tail violently slammed in between the avian's legs, projecting the demon up and deep into the ceiling of the spherical cavern. Sofia dodged with minimal movements the rain of stone and debris that fell around her as the demon forced its way out of the stone. She was already flying up, delivering a heavy punch to her struggling enemy. The fist was caught by the creature's talons and promptly torn off. Sofia felt no pain anyway, she still had the great shield, 2 legs and a tail, enough to fight. She didn't think full thoughts anymore. She was only focused on dodging, weaving her way around the attacks of the avian demon's long legs and occasional wing swipes, waiting for another opportunity. She could only stay below now. The talons raked on her shield, it was starting to get heavily damaged and the regeneration couldn't keep up with the pace of the fight. The demon's other leg came and Sofia caught the flaw in the strike, kicking away the clawed foot, obliterating the bones inside. Wanting to end this as fast as possible, she threw the shield like a projectile at the monster's face while she flew in between its legs. The demon's wings cut the shield into 2, but Sofia had made her way to its back. The following tail hit was devastating, raking off the avian's flesh and leaving a huge bloody gash across its back. With a single wing beat, the avian turned around to face Sofia, then, spreading its wings and legs like a starfish, it screeched again. The cry this time was charged with mana. Sofia's vision and mana senses were currently the best they had ever been. She understood that this was a curse rapidly closing in on her. Chapter 150, All for Naught. Sofia gritted her teeth, the curse wave was coming faster than she could escape. She needed to act quickly if she didn't want to be consumed by the attack. She propelled herself toward a crack in the cavern ceiling that the monster's previous crash there had created. The avian tried to stop her, but Sofia was too fast and managed to fold her wings and fit inside the crack. Even then, she had to keep going up as some of the cursed mana found its way in as the wave continued past. The avian demon attacked the ceiling, creating deep cuts in the stone with its wings that Sofia dodged by making her way along the fissure. As soon as the opportunity presented itself, she used her tail as a spring to propel herself down on the avian, resulting in a head-to-head collision. Both fighters reeled back from the shock briefly before starting to brawl again. The battle kept going, Sofia swerving around the massive body of the avian demon, using every limb to hit and kick the monster with quick but powerful hits. The demon had given up dodging, trying to land a big hit instead. Sofia felt a huge amount of mana gathering around the creature's beak, but it was too late. The mana wave hit Sofia, slowly turning her to stone. Unable to dodge anymore, she could only watch as the oversized abomination bird pinned her down. It kept her in its claws as it folded its wings and fell into the lava lake below, slamming her into the ground at its very bottom, killing her before she could even die of the curse. The burning demon tried to fly out of the magma lake, the top half of its body was already out when it got pulled down by the leg and submerged again. The molten stone's heat was enough to inflict damage even on the 2 demons, but Sofia's smaller and more streamlined body was more agile. A battle inside the lake was at her advantage. She couldn't see anything and had to rely on her mana senses. The big bird was impossible to miss. The 2 demons brawled inside of the lake as the magma geysers created by their blows transformed the cavern into a make-believe underground volcano. Sofia was getting very worried, her health kept going down under the magma, but the struggle of the bird demon wasn't weakening in the slightest. The time limit of her transformation was getting closer and she only had 1 rune left. Health, 112 110/179 280. Stamina, 141 208/179 280. Mana, 0/179 280. At least the avian demon never used its curse skill while inside the magma. Eventually, the demon managed to get out and fly back up, instantly using its magic again. Sofia had been trying to follow, but she plunged back into the magma to avoid the attack, emerging after it washed over and starting to throw punches again. She was focused on attacking the same wing every time she could, gradually building up the damage. The avian demon was a lot more cautious now. They both danced in the air, exchanging and dodging many blows. The avian tried its best to fly up while Sofia was struggling to keep the fight going near the lake's surface. She was punishing the avian with vicious tail hits every time it stopped using its wings to defend itself and tried to fly up instead. Every so often the bird would use its curse magic, and every time Sofia dodged by plunging into the magma lake. But despite the extreme speed of these events, it was getting harder to do as the demon managed to fly slightly higher each time. Sofia kept taking hits from the demon's unrelenting assault. Down to less than 10,000 health, she went in for a last big hit, suffering a fatal blow in the process. A few seconds later, she woke up at the bottom of the lake again. I have 30 seconds left. With both legs and her tail planted at the bottom of the lake, she gave her full strength to jump up. Flying like a cannonball at the avian demon that had been flying up again, she saw the results of her last hit. The demon's left wing was almost broken, it was so damaged Sofia could see the black bone under the flesh. The monster felt Sofia coming and turned to face her before the impact. Sofia faked a frontal punch, which the monster tried to block with its right wing. Only for Sofia to take a sharp aerial turn at the last second, latching onto the huge monster's left wing. She dug her way through the flesh and grabbed the black bone that was thicker than her waist. Bone dominus. The bone's matter rearranged itself to take a new shape. It withdrew from the wing, leaving behind a floppy boneless appendage, and instead burst out in sharp spikes impaling the monster's torso and head. This was as far as this bone would go. If she changed it any further it would crumble. The avian demon screamed like never before, failing to cast its curse. Both demons were tumbling down toward the lake. Sofia climbed the bone spike that pierced through the demon's head. Powering through the attacks of the monster's remaining wing, she reached the tiny head with its black beak. Sliding her clawed fingers along the spike, she thrust her arm under the skin of the avian demon's head. She found the skull. Under her control, the monster's skull lost its function as a body part created to protect the brain to be a tool to pierce it with 1,000 sharp osseous spikes. Like a puppet whose strings had been cut, the avian demon's struggles stopped. Just in time. Health, 28 146/179 280. Stamina, 2566/179 280. Mana, 0/179 280. Sofia's transformation was coming to an end. She didn't want her life to end in a magma lake. With no time left to even get her hand out of the giant demon's head, she gave one last powerful beat of her wings, sending them crashing against a side of the cavern. They hit the stone wall and tumbled down until the avian demon's huge body ended in a position that stopped their fall, a few meters away from the magma. Sofia finally managed to free her hand from the demon's head as her own body finished to retrieve its humanity. She jumped off from the monster's carcass and let herself lay on the incurved stone ground of the spherical cavern. Health, 941/5995. Stamina, 28/1995. Mana, 0/89,000. She was injured but the transformation back had helped stabilize her body. She wasn't bleeding and her health and stamina were actually going back up sometimes when she breathed in, at a snail's pace, 1 point at a time. I'm glad this thing actually went down without its brain. If it didn't I would be dead for real. Sofia glanced at her many system notifications. There were many things in there, like the warning that she wouldn't be able to regain any mana for half an hour and that she had gained a 10-level debt. The system informed her she would only have to pay it after reaching level 200 to not interfere with the trial. A lot had happened in so little time. Why did this whole thing even happen? First of all, I should have never entered the cathedral. Second, I absolutely shouldn't have gone down. I also failed to notice the hidden ritual circle. But why did the apostle explode like that? Thinking back on all of her information on demons, she picked up one thing that had somehow eluded her until now. It was back when she was inside the Pyramid of Domination in the desert. She and Alith had activated a ritual that transformed into a small stone dwarf. She replayed the message of the dwarven statuette in her mind, repeating the words of the dwarf. I made sure the ritual chamber would screw up their hideous faces. That's right, I know what they're going to do. Not on my watch. The Demon King can go die in a hole for all I care. I'm not really able to go against them now, there is nothing I can do after they mutate. Mutate. Become much stronger, hideous, and too dumb to escape a tower's basement or a pyramid kind of mutate. The bird was strong but it wasn't very smart. It never understood I was focusing all my attacks on the same wing and still kept using it to block half the time. It also plunged into the magma lake to finish me when I was already dying from the curse and hurt itself in the process. Also I can't for a second believe that the shackled demon woman crying her heart out when I showed the slightest intent of leaving would have suddenly turned silent and murderous like that without some kind of mental fuckery happening. Almost makes me regret deleting Pristine Essence. Almost. But also I would have lost if not for the effect of Bone Dominus. It's very fortunate that it works without mana. Anyway, I need to learn more about this mutation thing after I leave. I never saw an exit while I was fighting, leaving might be hard. I need to find where the entrance used to be and have the graveyard crew phase me through the newly deposited layer of stone. I lost all my possessions. And Perith is dead again. Great day. At least I guess my clothes will reappear when I get mana so I won't have to walk out naked. And this whole fight was for nothing. Well, not quite nothing, at least Sanctity's level shot up. Sanctity reached level 78. Sanctity reached level 100. I don't even get any experience for the K. The kill? Sofia gulped. She was lit up by the eerie red glow of the self-combusting corpse of the bird demon a few meters below. There hadn't been any kill notification in her log.